Hello and welcome to another GM Tips. GM Rick here. I'm sorry I haven't done too many new ones. Part of it is I've just been buried. You know how it gets. Some days you have a lot of time to work things in between. But being a dad of three and being a fiance and having a home game, getting ready for a major PFS, Pathfinder Society, outing with Anime or ACON, and then doing a mini module as well as converting modules for another author, it just kind of gets you happy busy. I mean, it's the best way I can put it. But I know many others are more busy than I am. If you look at a guy like Matthew Mercer, he's constantly crazy busy, and yet he has time to do things. I know many of our other guys who do the same type of things, like Nerdarchy and some of the others, are crazy busy, and yet they're able to come out with some pretty consistent videos. So I want to make sure I'm doing the same for you guys as well. Sorry for a little bit of the fluctuation. My camera does that. When it catches different lighting in movement, it sometimes does a realignment, so you'll see it kind of flash a little in the background. So I apologize for that. So today, topics. Doing a campaign based on Asian flavors. So, like Legends of the Five Rings. A lot of people love that, and I've read into that a little bit. I like some of Legend of the Five Rings because it's one of the few systems that is 100% immersed in Asia. Now, let me be a little fair there. It is based in Japan, feudal Japan. But I think in general, there's a lot of exotic things that you can base a campaign off of. So whether you do a campaign in Africa with more of an African, what am I looking for? I have the word right on the tip of my tongue. The grasslands out there, savanna, a savanna warm-based campaign, temperate, or whether you're doing more of a junglish, exotic, Asian-style skin campaign, or even if you're doing one with Native Americans or the natives, so you're doing more of a native-style campaign, you want to really do some research into the materials available to you. Now, again, unfortunately, we base a lot on our current Earth and where things are, so I do reference things like that a lot because there's very little that we create that isn't based off of something or some legend we already know. That's how we are. We're creatures of habit. We very seldom come up with something really off the wall for things. So it doesn't matter whether you're going into a feudal time or whether you're going into more of a Shadowrun current time. The one thing you've got to realize and delve into a little bit is how you design your Asiatic cultures. If you use current designs, here's some things to take into mind. Number one, unless you're from Asia Pacific and you've grown up in that area or you spend a serious amount of time in that area, the culture is way different than Western culture. And that's one of the things that as I look at these type of campaigns, I take that into account. How they look at life, how they revere gods and goddesses and spirits, how they revere nature much more and have a healthy respect for nature. How they utilize the things and conventions available to them. That all plays into stuff. Hang on real quick. I'm going to adjust my light, and I'll be right back with you. So give me 2 seconds. All right. Let's do this. There we go. This should hopefully weed out some of the fluctuations. We'll see. So all those things play in, and while you're looking at these campaigns, getting to know the culture itself is really critical as a GM or DM. Because if you design a campaign that's based around another culture, based on Western values and Western beliefs of Earth, you're going to be way off the mark. Way off. So I'm going to focus today just specifically on Asia. Now I'm going to do another one probably on Africa, and I'll do another one on Native America, or the natives. So like South America, Central America, some of those things. So the Mayas, the Incas, the Aztecas. We'll do a little bit more of a dive into that. And again, I know you can watch these things on history channels, but this is a quick shot. So as you're getting ideas, you can really pull it together. So what are some things to consider when you're looking at Asia? Well, in Asia, family is a major driving factor. Now, we say it is in the West. No, we're not even close to what Asia's consideration for family and family traditions is. So the two things that are really important in an Asian culture is family. If you cross family, if you do something against family, if you ostracize family, it is a major taboo and a no-no. It is considered the ultimate taboo in that culture, outside of disobeying one's emperor or leader. So family structure is really crucial. Now, whether it's matriarchal, patriarchal, every society is a little different on that. But they really look at the baba or the grandfather or the grandmother. And these are the things that you've got to keep in mind when you design those cultures, is most people don't adventure out unless it's done as a family. And family is always important, so staying in touch with family, keeping the family traditions, keeping family ways of doing things are very critical. So when you have your characters write their stories in that type of a flair, that is something they need to take into account, is that their family and how they grew up is very important in the scheming of that and the framework of that particular culture. The second thing is the reverence of nature and natural spirits. That's why you see in all these Hayao Miyazaki and all the animes, the spirits are very, very much, and the elements are considered very highly when they regard these type of things, and keeping a balance in this. So that is why that's so important. There is that balance. And I'm going to use a Chinese term, the yin and yang, yin and yang. That it's the balance of the two that comes together to bring a harmony. And societies are more about law and harmony than necessarily good or evil. And so in a traditional Asian culture, good and evil are important somewhat, but the law is more important than chaos. Chaos is seen as not a good thing in that type of culture, whereas order, law, structure is so much more important and vital. And the mastering of self and the mastering of one's inner energies and chi is very important in all these things. And so keep that in mind as you look at that type of culture. That is something very important. So little shrines to spirits. Even though you may worship a god or goddess, there is reverence for all of them. Whereas in Western culture, not so much. They're not always a reverence. Sometimes in certain ones there are. The Nordic cultures, not as much. But as you get into the Greek cultures, a little more. So there's kind of that balance there and harmony that you have to take into account. So when you're designing that type of adventure, lots of things revering the spirits, little shrines, little areas of worship where you leave a token of one's sacrifice to them. That is important in order to keep a harmony in the area. Otherwise, the Oni and the spirits of the area may come after that particular person. So, the Oni. Oni covers anything monster. It could be demonic, diabolical, abyssal, daemonic. The Oni is considered a monster. And that's what an Oni is. They are spirits that are very monstrous and just horrific in origin. They're not always evil, but they are horrific. So giants, ogres, other types of creatures and monsters, bugbear, goblin, orcs, they're all considered Oni. Even though they use in a lot of the campaigns like Pathfinder and D&D, they have a separate Oni that covers that. For instance, an ogre mage comes out of the Japanese culture. In Western culture and Western type of things, they didn't mention a magus ogre. The ogre mage came from the Oni. That's why the blue skin, the horn, and all the other things, it came out of that culture. So understand a lot of our monsters that we have for our games come out of that culture. But the Oni are capricious. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're good, but they have a real appetite for human life and human flesh and living a human life or human desires. So the Oni are fueled by that. And understanding that kind of cultural thing is very important when you look at that. Now, it's Japanese. Now, Chinese has very different. So the Chinese, that's where your Chinese vampire, the Jiangshi, comes from. Jiangshis are basically ghosts of spirits that are unsettled, that have had a horrific passing, and they thirst for the life of a mortal. It's not even about blood. It's not about these things. It's about life. They want to be alive. And so they are feeding off the life of that being. And that's why they're so different than the Western vampire. The Western vampire, yes, wants to be alive, but they see blood as life. The Jiangshi does not see blood as life only. It sees all of it. The qi, the energy, the spirit energy. They feed off that. And so, I'm taking a little bit of dive in here, but I'm showing you how different the cultures are. And getting to know that is so important. The jungle spirits of like Burma and Cambodia and Thailand, very different. And the jungle type of things. And the life in the jungle and how it's seen. The jungle is, yes, somewhat fought back from civilization, but it is a constant battle between the living green world and what is the human world. And the two sometimes intertwine. That's why you see so many plants and so much green on the stone structures. There's a deep, deep connection to the earth itself. And there's a reverence, but yet sometimes a respect and fear of it as well. So the jungle cultures are very different in how they view things. Even down into India. India is about the balance and harmony also of family and life, but also productivity. They see commerce and trade is very important, as does most Asian empires. The commerce, the trade, that is the lifeblood of the society. So it is very important, and when that is disrupted, it is disrupting of the harmony and the balance of things. There is a caste culture. Most of the Asian cultures believe in caste cultures. We used to have that in the Western cultures, but we've grown past it. Not so. Even into today, the Asian cultures still have caste, and they still portray that. And it's still very much that certain families are held above others. Certain histories of families are held above others. Because of that long caste structure, they still have not casted off. So even in modern games like Shadowrun, you've got to remember the caste system is very much there. Now, where there is lack of land, livable land, but a large culture, like Japan, they have adopted do not commit crimes against one another. It still happens, but there's a courtesy overall. General populace is don't steal something. Don't do something one shouldn't. We must live together in harmony, and there's so many of us. If we were to be in conflict all the time, we would kill each other. And that's kind of the look of it. So if you build an island-based Asian culture campaign, remember, how much land is livable? How much land is not? The land is protected in those type of cultures because they don't want to poison the land. There's only so much that they can work with. So it is very valuable. So somebody who does something to poison the land is the ultimate crime. And so how the forces of law handle things are very different than other societies where they let things slip. Not so. Not so. Even the Yakuza, the Tongs, are respected. They're not liked necessarily. The crime is not appreciated, but there is a structure. And even in that, there are rules. In other words, law enforcement doesn't eradicate all crime. It's not going to happen. Neither does government. It can't happen. So corruption is high in most Asian cities because there is a framework structure that is allowable and acceptable in order to keep a harmony. Otherwise, you'd be in constant war and conflict, and you would destroy the very place that you are trying to prosper in. So keep that in mind when you're designing these things. It's the same way like ninjas. Ninjas are accepted, as are other assassins, like the Thuggee and other things. Not so much by the Westerns, when the Westerns took over that part of Asia, but more so original culture. It was considered a part of life, and they were a part of the harmonious machine. But there was rules that had to be followed. Even among the ninja, they had rules. And if a clan crossed those rules, the clan elders would necessarily eliminate that rogue element because they had crossed a line they should not. Even there were times that they were allowed to assassinate certain levels of individuals, but at certain other levels you could not because of the wars that would start because of it. So realize they had a lot of structural things, and this is why I hit this type of deal, because if you're running your campaigns loosey-goosey with these things, that's nothing like that culture. And you're missing the very cultural aspects that make it so unique and exotic. The different elements of resistance and guerrilla fighting. There was much more guerrilla fighting in the Asias because different Asian continents would conquer each other. Even so, like in Pathfinder, or maybe even in Shadowrun, that as you emulate those elements, there is always that, you will not conquer me, you will not run my country, you will not be here. The hatred even between China and Japan today is very evident in Taiwan and Japan because of what was done. The lines were crossed, and there's no... On the outside, there seems to be forgiveness. There is not. The cultures are long memory. Even among Mongol conquering of China and all these different areas, this aspect has been long deep-rooted, that hatred for other cultures. So mind you, even though they may have a conquering force, the base elements don't necessarily agree with the conqueror. And they are brutal. And that's where we see the devaluation of life. When we saw the Vietnam conflict, when we saw Laos and Cambodia and all these other conflicts, why did they fight so viciously and so horrifically? Because they were tired of being occupied. They wanted to be their own country. And they were tired of the occupiers. And if you read the We Are Heroes Not Very Young, We Are Heroes Very Young by Hal Moore, one of the things he hits on was what happened at Dien Bien Phu. And I know I'm hitting a lot of historical things, but it plays into designing the campaign. They were vicious about what they did to the French because they were sending a message. Mind you, as you designed your cultures there, you may do the same thing. Certain cultures have been conquered or occupied by other forces, but yet the base elements of those cultures viciously and brutally push against their oppressors. Life is very much limited in value. It is what you produce. It is what you bring to the family. It is what you bring to the harmony of the area that your life is valued by. And if you choose not to do that, then life is fleeting. You don't necessarily have to have seppuku and the other things that the Japanese culture had for samurai. Mind you, samurai didn't always commit seppuku. Seppuku came about later. There was a family of samurai that served an emperor. And again, don't remember the exact family, but I remember reading about it. They actually wanted to show their loyalty to the shogun so much, that they were willing to say, if we failed, our life is forfeit, and we hand you our life to do with as you please. And that's where the art of seppuku came about from. But in the early days, it wasn't there. It was not in the early part of the Japanese Empire. So, mind you, when you run the samurais in your campaign, if you run a samurai class, whether it's a cyber samurai, whether it's something else, seppuku is not always considered a must with samurai. However, honor is. And if you do not live to the honor of your clan, you can become Ronin, which is the outcast. Ronin is the outcast. And they live with this. Now, everybody thinks, oh, cool, I will play a Ronin, and this will be great. No. Something you can design into your culture is the Ronins are the outsiders, and they take it hard because they have failed. They have failed their master. They have failed their clan. So they live with that failure every day. Imagine having it so deep ingrained in you that you have to live with your failure and face it every day that you wake. It hangs like a burden. There's a heaviness to a Ronin. There is a somberness. There is a deeper appreciation of honor and life, even in a Ronin, because they have known what it's like to be the outcast. So Ronin aren't these just rogue elements that run around. If you run Ronin that way, if your players are running Ronin that way, they do not get it. You have not drilled home to them what a Ronin is. And that comes with the education. And again, not everybody understands Japan. They love Afro Samurai and all these other little shows where they see these really cool samurai or Samurai Jack or one of these other ones. And they love them. And they love the idea of them. But if you don't understand them and you don't understand the culture and Bushido, it's a very different way of thinking. I hope I'm hitting some of the things. Shrines, bathhouses, cleanliness, having good meals, good wine, good sake, other things, rice wine. Why did they have rice wine? Because they had no grapes to work with. So rice wine became that. Over in China and some other areas, it wasn't always rice wine. They had grapes. They could ferment and do other things. But you're limited to what you have available to you. So what kind of plants are available? What kind of things are there? That all plays into it. It doesn't all have to be that. You can pick whatever. This is where you can flavor it and make it different from what is Earth. And you can take a different step in there. I love, like, for instance, with this, how they rewrote and had the Japanese culture rule everything in all these dragon empires. But then that empire fell apart. And the emperor fell apart. So now they're in their little shogunates. And it's really cool. And they have some Western, influence from Avestan, where they came in and settled. You can do that as well. You can have either during the height of when the empire is whole, or you can have it in the decline where it's fallen apart into its individual elements. They still keep parts of the old empire, but there's much that's lost. So the richness of life and music, how they love the music. And I would say incorporating different cultures, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, string music, flute music, beautiful for a campaign like that. And you can do it either through your own things through YouTube, or you can use my favorite little deal with Syrinscape. And you can bring into Syrinscape all the different types of musics. And it's really cool. And then you can put in the battle and the bustling and the different languages that are there. It's just that's a cool setting for your players. Cities are large. There are some smaller cities, but most cities are very full, especially in cultures with limited land. So there's so much you can do with this. You can have the kitsune, the wayang. Even in the Shadowrun things, you can incorporate those forward into that, which is really cool. I love the races. The Samsuran. There are so many other races that you can do there. You can do Oni. You can pick different things to play for your characters. Hobgoblins. One of the things I love that Paizo did is they put the hobgoblins into the Asian cultures as really a respected, militaristic samurai code group. I thought it was really cool. It gave some teeth to the hobgoblins that were normally not there. So you can do some neat things with cultures and races. So keep in mind, get some understanding, and I'm going to say this in each one of my videos about these cultures. Get some understanding. Dig into the history. Understand how life is valued. Understand the structure. Understand what's important to that culture. Really play that out for your players. Help them to understand that. It makes for an interesting and unique and very different campaign than a Western campaign. And I love that for that reason. Even Eastern Europe is very different. So if you do some Eastern Europe, like Ustalav and some other ones, and these other, like Pathfinders and these others, very different than the West. So keep that in mind. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate every one of you that watches this and supports it. I hope that I'm doing a great job of picking some topics for you guys that are off the beaten path. And have a great week of gaming. Thanks again.